Is there a diet that will crush diabetes and that you can sustain for the rest of your life? The good news is, yes, there is. And if you include these 5 components, you will see victory today, tomorrow, and as long as you live on this earth. Well, if you've watched a few of my videos, you don't have any mystery about what kind of a diet I'm talking about. I'm talking about the keto/low-carb diet with a good portion of intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating thrown in. That this diet works is incontestable. There's just no question, no serious, intelligent person can deny that it will quickly bring your glucose down and that it will be very effective in combating high glucose, high blood sugar. Where people have a problem, though, relates to a little word called bias. The idea that, yeah, it may work, but I just don't like it, and so let me see if I can come up with a couple of reasons why you shouldn't really do this low-carb diet. And there are 2 main reasons that people will use. So the first argument is that, yeah, it'll work temporarily, but in the long run, it will be bad. It will mess you up and you'll end up with a heart attack or all kinds of health problems. Don't go to that keto diet by any means, because in the long run, it's going to really get you. Sure, you're doing better now. Sure, your triglycerides are down. Sure, your glucose levels are down. Sure, you're feeling better. Sure, you've got more energy, but in the long run, oh, it's going to be terrible. So that is one argument you will hear. A second argument you will hear is that, yeah, it works, but it's totally unsustainable. Nobody can stay on a radical diet like that. You may be able to do it today. You may be able to do it next month, but give yourself a few months and you will fall off the wagon. Nobody can do it. Well, I just don't believe it. First, let me say that the keto diet does work because it's a law of nature that when you take away the stimulus that's causing your blood glucose to rise, guess what? Your blood glucose doesn't rise anymore. It stays steady and it begins to go down. So there is a law of nature. It is so simple and it works for virtually everybody. Now, if you're a type 1, sure, you're going to have to take insulin. But even with a type 1, it's going to go so much better for you with a low-carb diet and being able to take less insulin than it would be if you just eat like crazy anything and everything, and then you've got to constantly ingest huge amounts of insulin. In fact, this keto/low-carb diet works so well. We had one person write a comment. He's doing this fall challenge, which we are doing, and you've got about a week left to sign up for it. But anyway, he says this. I had to laugh reading this. He says, okay, I get it. I see how this works. After only a few days in, did you hear that? After only a few days in, rock solid stable glucose on the CGM, continuous glucose monitor. He says, but this really isn't about a 4-month challenge. It has to be a continuous lifestyle going forward, or we go right back where we came from. I agree, although there may be some changes you can make. He says, I feel like I'm gaming the system though. I love that. It's like I'm cheating. This just feels wrong that I could get solid, stable glucose in such a short time. It's like I must be cheating. Is it really this easy, he says. And then he says, well, is it really only about the A1C, or is there more to it than this? I guess to get to a normal A1C, everything else is going to have to fall in line. Glad I decided to go all in. I love that. So this guy is like, this is too easy. I mean, I'm eating the low carb diet and I am doing the intermittent fasting and I've got my CGM on and bang, stable glucose, rock steady. He says, I feel like I'm gaming the system. I feel like I'm cheating somehow. No, my friend, you're not cheating. You're just following certain rules of nature which say that if you overindulge on carbohydrates, your blood sugar will go up, and that's especially true as you reach middle age. It just happens to be that way, and the simplest way to reverse that is stop eating so many carbohydrates, stop snacking so much. In fact, stop snacking at all. So, will it be bad in the long run? No, it won't be bad in the long run, but that's not the focus on today's Beat Diabetes episode. I want to talk about the sustainable part. That is probably the biggest reason people will tell you don't do it. It's not sustainable. You can't stay with it. Sure, it may work for a little bit, but you will never, ever, 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 ever be able to stay with it. It's way too restrictive. Well, the truth is you could say that about any diet, that you could say, well, that's not sustainable. Vegan diet's not sustainable. Vegetarian diet's not sustainable. A low-calorie diet's not sustainable. Paleo diet's not sustainable. You can say that about anything, and yet there are people that make all these diets work for years and years and years. And certainly I'm an example of the sustainability of the low-carb diet because I've been doing it for 20 years, and I'm doing just fine. But anyway, there are 5 components, really 4 plus a bonus one, 4 components plus one extra that will make this diet sustainable. And I will acknowledge that I hear from people that will tell me, well, Dennis, I was doing so good and then something happened. I got discouraged, or I got COVID, or I got this, or I got that, or I did this, or I did that, and I just fell off the wagon. I started eating anything and everything, and now my numbers are back up. Yeah, it can happen, but there are several components you need to build into your lifestyle that will make this far less likely to happen. So let's go over them quickly. Number one of the biggest things you can have in your life is a knowledge of good and evil. Now, I'm not talking morally, and I could go on and on about that, but we're talking dietarily, a knowledge of what's good for you and what's evil for you. And, you know, when I go to a buffet restaurant, or if I'm eating at somebody's house and I see a bunch of food as a possibility for me to eat, my low-carb radar goes to work, and I immediately begin to designate that's a dangerous food, that's a safe food, that's an iffy food. And I can label them all. And I've had enough experience that I've got a very good knowledge of what will work for me and what will not. So you got to have that. Most people will eat without ever thinking about, is this good or not? So people will stuff themselves with chips, or they'll eat a huge plate of mashed potatoes, and they'll never even think about the fact that it might not be good for their blood sugar. They may be diabetic, but they see that big mashed potato hunk in their plate, and they say, well, it's not sweet. I'm not eating a candy bar, so it's got to be fine. No, it's not fine. You might as well eat a candy bar. In fact, that big helping of mashed potatoes is probably worse than 2 candy bars. Probably have more carbs that you're going to have to deal with. But if you don't have any knowledge about what your friends are and what your enemies are, you don't know that. And so you just go through life, ignorance is bliss, eating anything and everything with just a vague idea that I probably ought to cool it on the candy and the cakes and the pies, but you never think about the potatoes and the rice and the starches and the breakfast cereals and the pasta. And those things can raise blood sugar just as much as candy, cakes, and pies. That is one of the major insights you're going to have to beat diabetes and to stay with it. And once you get it drilled into your brain and into your heart, that starches are as unhealthy as sugars. And once you begin to, that's just a part of the way you think, you're going to be on your way to beating diabetes. The Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. Diabetics die. Diabetics get their legs cut off, get their toes cut off, have to go on dialysis, go blind for a lack of knowledge. Number 2, the second component that has to be a part of your lifestyle and a part of you is this little fellow, using a glucose meter. This is so important. I would say this, our world is divided into two kinds of people, those who use these babies and those who do not. And those who do not ever use a glucose meter, they never test their blood sugar, they're missing it, especially if they're in the late 30s or beyond. You've got to know what's going on. And even if you get an A1C done a couple of times a year, that's not enough. You need to do post-meal glucose tests and find out how high you spike. Most people spike too high. I would say most Americans, probably most people in the world. And if you can eat a meal and spike up past 150, you got problems, my friend. I don't care if you've got an A1C of 5.4. If you can spike up past 150, you've got issues. You need to be careful. You need to make sure that you're not eating too many carbs, or you will eventually become fully diabetic. I remember early on, as I was starting to test myself, I had what I thought was a very healthy meal. I had some salmon. It did have kind of a bread coating, so that wasn't so good, but I thought that's not going to make too much difference. I had a banana, and I think I had a salad, so I was kind of proud of myself. All healthy foods, and yet my blood sugar spiked up to around 150, and I knew that was too high. And I'm like, wait a minute, that the salmon shouldn't have done it. Maybe the bread coating hurt a bit. But then I did some investigating with bananas, and I realized they've got almost as much glucose as a candy bar. They've got all kinds of natural sugar. And if you ever want to raise your blood sugar in a hurry, if you're having a hypo, one of the quickest ways to do it is eat a banana. They'll do it fast. So you got to use a glucose meter. In your early stages, you've got to do it post-meal, so you begin to discover, all right, this works, this does not work, this works, this does not work, this works, this does not work. If you are trying to beat diabetes without using a glucose meter, it's about like going up to the batter's box in a baseball game, and you're trying to hit the ball, but you don't have a bat. So you're trying to swing your hand at the ball. Well, if you make contact at all, you're going to hurt yourself. You've got to have a bat, and you've got to have a glucose meter, and you've got to stop being so fearful about using it. And let that become your friend. Get over the idea of you're going to hurt your poor fingers. If you've got a CGM, and if you can afford that, or if it's in your insurance, then by all means, that's fine. That's perfect. But if you can't, just get an ordinary glucose meter. And if you can afford the strips to test a lot, then test a lot. If you can only afford to do it a little bit, then test a little bit. A third component that has to be in your life if you're going to beat diabetes permanently and keep those glucose numbers down for the rest of your days is you're going to have to collect all kinds of low-carb meals and desserts. It's just not going to work if you just have a couple of things that you eat all the time. When I started out with blood sugar problems, about all I knew was what I could not eat. Can't eat this and can't eat that and can't eat potatoes and can't eat rice. And I just was just scratching lines through all kinds of meals that were my go-to meals all of my life. And I didn't really know what I could eat. And so I dropped a lot of weight, not so much just because of doing keto, but because I just did not know what to eat. And then I ran into a fella named George Stella. I didn't run into him personally, but I saw his TV program. He had a low-carb program on the Food Network. And suddenly I discovered there's all kinds of low-carb foods that you can try and use as a substitute. And two of the big ones that he introduced me to were low-carb pancakes, which I loved pancakes and had eaten them all of my life, and low-carb blueberry muffins, which were terrific. Make some eggs, make some bacon, have a blueberry muffin or two, and bam, it's a great meal. Doesn't raise your blood sugar hardly at all. Thank you, George Stella. When I had the keto oats, it's like, wow, I will be eating this the rest of my life, however long that turns out to be. I can't ever imagine that I'll go too long, maybe a week or two at most, without eating keto oats. I call them that. I don't know if that's their official name or not. But boy, I'll tell you what, those were great discoveries. It's like you've got this big basket and you're just putting recipes in as you find them, as you discover them. And some of those you try and you say, well, it's okay. Once in a while I'll do this. But others you try and you're like, whoa, I'll be eating this the rest of my life, probably every week. So you got to get that. You've got to build up a collection of recipes and meals and even the desserts on our fall challenge. I am insisting you have a couple of keto desserts twice a week, no more than that, but twice a week on Friday and Saturday evenings at the end of your dinner meal, because I want to expose you to this. Some people will leave a comment and say, I just don't know how I'm going to get over not eating sweets. And I'm like, well, who says you have to get over not eating sweets? I never have. I'm still eating sweets, but not sugar sweets. 4 is simply success. There is nothing that succeeds like success. There is nothing that is more motivating than to know I can do this. This is working for me. When you get results, and when Mike the Meter confirms them, or your A1C lab test confirms it, or your fasting glucose confirms it, when you start to see results and know I'm better today than I was a month ago, I'm better today than I was 3 months ago, I'm making progress, I may not be there yet, but I'm making progress. When you begin to feel that way and experience that, there's going to be no stopping you. You've got to experience some success if you're going to beat diabetes. I got this email from a lady, and she's in this 2022 challenge, the fall version of it, and she hadn't been doing it long, but she says, my numbers are dropping thanks to you and God. I made a pecan mug cake today, your recipe, cut it into 3 cakes. I ate one like you do, and it did not raise my blood sugar level at all. And she puts what? 1, 2, 3, 3 exclamation points. She says, finally, a yummy sweet treat that tastes like a sugar treat. I no longer eat sugar or carbs. I also fast every day from 7 p.m. until 12 noon, and I'm shocked I don't get hungry. So she's experiencing success at several levels. Her numbers are going down. She's finding she can eat things she really loves, and they don't spike her blood sugar. And then she's finding she can do this intermittent fasting. She can stop eating at 7 p.m. and not eat anymore until noon, maybe have some bulletproof coffee as a substitute for breakfast. She says, I'm shocked I don't get hungry. Well, and she's not the only one that has said this. I'm hearing from a number of people. When you eat a low carb, and those carbs are what makes you hungry, they'll satisfy you for about an hour and a half, and then you get hungry again. And you eat, and you feel full, and they'll satisfy you for about an hour and a half, and then you get hungry again. But when you eat higher fat and protein, you don't get nearly so hungry. And that's one of the reasons that the keto low-carb diet is sustainable. You don't get so hungry. In fact, you should not get very hungry. And I don't. I got used to bulletproof coffee in the mornings. I get used to a low-carb, higher-fat, higher-protein meal for lunch, higher-fat, higher-protein meal for dinner, sometimes a little small keto treat with some coffee after my dinner, immediately after, normally. And I'm satisfied, well satisfied. Success. And we all have to taste it. And once you do, it's going to be hard to stop you. Once you see the numbers coming down, you realize this is pretty good, and you try another meal, and it's like, wow, this is good. I can see myself eating this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And you start collecting meals, collecting keto snacks, and begin to get into the rhythm of a diabetes-crushing lifestyle. And then, talk about sustainable, there'll be nobody can talk you out of it. And you won't find yourself backsliding. Fifthly, after you reach your goal, then you just keep immersed in the low-carb world, watching videos like these and others that are put out by different ones, and reading an occasional book, and you will see tremendous success, and it will last you. Now, as I was thinking about this, our challenges that we do are proving to be very powerful in helping people get a kickstart into this rhythm of victory. And let me just say those words again, the rhythm of victory over diabetes. And the reason these challenges work so well is that they give you a date to start. They give you some training wheels. Here's your diet. Here's what you're going to eat. Here's your menu for today. You're going to do carnivore on Mondays, and you're going to have keto treats on Fridays and Saturdays. And then there'll be information. I'll be recommending videos. I'll be sharing with you different ideas and tips. So you're going to get the information. I'm going to be encouraging you to use your meter, and you're going to be using your meter. I'm going to be giving you exposure to all kinds of different recipes and different meals and different keto treats. By the time that you go through this challenge, you will have had an immersion into the world of low-carb, diabetes-crushing diet and lifestyle. My hope is, and my belief is, for most of you, you will be hooked.